Hello and welcome to Pabbly Connect. So this video is going to be a complete guide on how you can integrate your application inside Pabbly Connect if your app uses AWS Signature as an authentication method. Now to do so, we just require two basic things. First one is the API doc of the application which you want to integrate. And the second thing is a Pabbly Connect account. So let's begin. So here you can see that we have reached to the front-end dashboard of Pabbly Connect. And now to access the backend development platform of Pabbly Connect, just go to the URL section and here or after connect.pabbly.com, we just have to enter /app. And yes, now we have accessed the backend development platform. Now to start integrating your application, just click on this create new app button, give your application a name and click on save. So in this video guys, just for a reference, we are going to have a look on Amazon Seller Central. So how we have integrated Amazon Seller Central inside Pabbly Connect because it also uses AWS Signature as an authentication method. So after naming your application guys, the first thing what you have to do is to enter some basic details of the app, like the description of the application, that what does this application do. Then you have to upload the app logo and the logo size should be 64 x 64 inch pixel. After that, it comes one of the most important thing, and that is the auth type. So here in auth type, you can see there are several different authentication methods available inside Pabbly Connect. Out of which, in this video today, we are going to discuss AWS Signature as the authentication method. Now here guys, what you have to do to integrate Amazon Seller Central, you have to first create an app inside Amazon Seller Central's developer sections. And after creating that application and referring to the API doc of the application you want to integrate, you will get the redirect URL, authorize URL, token URL, and after creating the app, you will get the application ID, access key ID, secret ID, and client secret. All of these details. So after developing or creating this application inside developers platform of Amazon Seller Central, you have to enter those details of that app over here, which is required for the authentication. After entering those app details guys, here you have to also select this send client secret on access token. So we have referred to the API doc of Amazon Seller Central and we found that it requires client secret on access token. So that's why we have selected this option. Then here after this it asks us client authentication. So in the drop down we have two different type of client authentication options available. That is send as basic auth header and send client credentials in body. So we have to basically send the client credentials as basic auth header. So that's why we have selected this. Then here we have selected this field of set app auth parameter. Now guys, while authenticating, while connecting to AWS, what we have to do, we have to first select the region that in which region their account exists of Amazon Seller Central. For that, we have created this special parameter over here named as marketplace underscore ID. So this name we have referred to the API doc and we have got this name. And then after that, when you will click on this settings button, we can basically configure this parameter. And here we have given 5 options or 5 locations, 5 regions in which AWS exists. So that is India, USA, Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. And here we have added their region IDs in front of that. So in this way, while authenticating or connecting their Amazon Seller Central account with Pabbly Connect using AWS Signature authentication method, we will be asking the region of their Amazon Sellers account to the user who is using this application in the front end. So while connecting, first we will give a pop-up and ask them that in which region their account exists. And after selecting that region, we will see the region ID or we will be using that region ID of that particular region to make this connection. So in this way, you can also enter some kind of description that what a user has to do over here. And if this field is mandatory to choose, then you can select this option of making this field required over here. And then just click on save. In the similar way, if you want to add multiple parameters, by clicking on this add parameter button, you can keep on adding multiple parameters as well. And by clicking on this settings button, you can configure these parameters according to your choice or your application's API doc. And after entering all of these authentication details and credentials, just click on save. And then we will see that the step 1 of integrating an AWS signature based application inside Pabbly Connect is completed. We have successfully entered some basic details of the app and selected the authentication details and authentication type of the app which we want to integrate. After doing this, let's move to the next part and start creating some triggers. For that, from the left side, we will go to this triggers section. And after that, here right now, as you can see, particularly of Amazon Seller Central, we have created only one trigger named as new order. So let's have a look on this trigger. So using this trigger event, I want to capture all the new orders which I get on my Amazon Sellers account. So I have given this trigger event a name of new order. If you want to start creating your trigger, just click on this create trigger button, give your trigger event a name and click on save. So after naming your trigger event, we have to also enter some basic description of this trigger event as well, that what happens by using this trigger event. After the description, we have an option of adding the video tutorial URL. So if you have some kind of video tutorial on how does this trigger event works of your application inside Pabbly Connect, you can add the URL of that video over here as well. It is the optional field. Then it comes the trigger type, and it is quite important. So here in Pabbly Connect, it offers three different types of triggers. First one is webhook setup by instruction. In case if your application allows your users to manually set up or add the webhook URL in your application, then you can select this kind of trigger type. Now after this, the second type is webhook setup by API request. So if your application has webhooks but you directly don't allow your users to add the webhook URL, you can set up this kind of trigger as well. So in this case, if your application requires some kind of API call or API request to add the webhook, you can select this webhook trigger type. And the third kind of trigger is polling to check new data. So if your application does not have webhooks, you can select this polling type of trigger as well. So in this case, at a regular interval of time, Pabbly Connect will pull some required data from your application and get that data inside Pabbly Connect workflow. So here, Amazon Seller Central does not have webhooks, so that's why we have selected polling type of trigger. After selecting the trigger type as polling, it asks us for polling speed. So right now, by default, the polling speed is given of 8 hours. This means every 8 hours, Pabbly Connect will pull the data from your application if you select this kind of trigger. But if you want to increase or decrease this polling speed, you can also request that to the Pabbly Connect support team. After that, it is asking us trigger response type. So here in dropdown, we have two different response types, simple response and advanced response. And by default, we want to get the simple response. That's why we have selected it. Also, if you want to add or show some kind of important help text, some kind of important instructions to a user who is using your trigger or using your application in the front end, you can add that important text over here as well. And after entering these basic details, just click on save. Now after that, after entering some basic details of the trigger event, we have to set up the API configuration of this trigger event as well. So first thing what we have to do is to select the HTTP method. So in the drop down, we can see all the 5 different methods. So you refer to the API doc of the application you are integrating and select the appropriate HTTP method over here. After that, we have to enter the API endpoint over here. So for whatever event you are building this trigger, you have to actually enter the API endpoint of that trigger or of that event. So by making the API call on this endpoint, we will get the required data. So this trigger is of new order and we have selected polling speed, for example, of 8 hours. So in this way, every 8 hours, this API call will be made on this endpoint and it will get the data of all the orders from Amazon Seller Central inside Pabbly Connect. Then after selecting our API endpoint, it is asking us authentication. So in this video, we are working on AWS Signature authentication. So select the authentication type of your application. And then while integrating an app, you have to actually connect your AWS account or Amazon Sellers account or the account of the application you are integrating inside Pabbly Connect. Just click on this connected button. As we have set up this connection authentication, it is asking us for the region. So we have all the 5 regions. Select your region, click on save, and then you have to actually connect your account from the application. It is important to connect our account, guys, because while setting up this integration or integrating your application inside Pabbly Connect, it is required to get some response from the application as well. That's why we have to connect it. After connecting the data, the next thing here we have is of HTTP headers. So if your application requires some kind of HTTP headers for every API call, by selecting this, you can add HTTP headers over here as well. And by clicking on this settings option, you can configure those headers too. So right now, Amazon Seller Central does not require any kind of headers, so we have ignored it. But it requires a parameter, a field, and that is of order status. So we have to, while making this API endpoint call, we have to basically enter that for what order status we want to get the new order details. So we have referred to the API doc and we found that this is the parameter which is required. So we have entered this parameter, and by clicking on this settings option in front of it, we have configured this parameter as well. So the order status or types of order status which Amazon Seller Central had is all of this. So in this way, we have created a static dropdown over here. In option label, we have shown our name of the order status which will be shown to the front end. So whatever text, whatever data you will be entering below option label, this will be the text, this will be the order status which will be shown to the user in front end. And in option value, whatever text, whatever data is supposed to be passed for this response while making the API call, you have to enter that exact data over here. In this way, if required, you can create dropdowns or multiple parameters or fields as well. So this was a dropdown field, a static dropdown field. That's why we have selected it. If you want to get some data, if you want your user in the front end to input some data for your application, you can also select the field type as string over here, and then you can pass that data to the application while making the API call. And also in this way, guys, you can add some help text at what a user is supposed to do. So here we have added a help text of choose an order status for which you want to trigger. And after configuring this parameter which you have created, just click on save. So in this way, by clicking on this plus button, add new parameter button, you can add multiple parameters as well and create multiple input field where it is required to get some data from the user in the front end. After that, it is giving us an option of request body raw JSON. So if it is required, if the API endpoint requires to get some kind of raw JSON body with data, then you can create that raw JSON body over here as well. Right now, Amazon Seller Central does not require it, so we have just ignored it. And after setting up this, after configuring this API endpoint, just click on save and then click on send test request. After clicking on send test request, here we will receive some response for this API call. So we have made the API call on this endpoint with all of these details, and then here we have received some response over here. And this is the response or the details or the data of all the orders of our Amazon Seller Central which we have received. So after getting this data, you will see that this payload orders data is right now present in array format. So we have received all the data from our Amazon Seller Central account inside Pabbly Connect, but this responses data is present in array format right now. So in the next step, here it is showing us simplify error response. So here in this next step, we are going to simplify this response and we are going to change this response from array format to a simple format. So by default in the dropdown, you will see the response which we have received in array, it has automatically detected this response. So we just have to click on send test request. And after that, in response, we will simplify this response. We have simplified this response which is received in array into a simpler format. So here we have received the simple response. But guys, whenever we make this API call, it will get the data or the details of all the orders from our Amazon Seller Central account. But we want to get the details or the data of only of new orders which are placed in past 8 hours. Whatever polling time you are adding or updating, we want to get the order details, or from all of these orders, we want to extract the order details of that particular order received on that time. Because every 8 hours, it is going to make this API call and it will once again repetitively get the old data as well. Now we have to segregate this data. We have to actually extract the new order details from this data. For that, we will scroll down and here we have a last step of new or record order settings. So by configuring this, by selecting new record order settings, we will tell Pabbly Connect that in which way we will detect that what is a new response, what is a new data, what is a new record. So first thing which it asks us is the unique record ID. That what is the ID on the basis of which we will identify that this is a different order. Like we have to select a unique ID which every order will have. So from the drop down, the responses which we have received over here after simplifying error response, we can see the same responses over here in the drop down. And out of all of this, I have selected the response of Amazon order ID. So in this way, every new order which I received will have a unique record ID, a unique order ID. So that's why I have selected this. Then it is asking us sorting order, that in which format, in which way we want to sort this data, on what basis we want to get this data. So we have two different types of sorting orders, by field or by position. If you select by position, it will sort the data from the top or from the bottom. But if you select by field, on the basis of particular field, on the responses of particular field, this data will be sorted. So here in sorting order, I have selected the purchase date and time. So in this way, guys, whatever will be the latest order, the order with the recent most latest purchase date and time, that response will be received inside Pabbly Connect. So in this way, we will segregate this data. After entering all of this, we have successfully configured this new order trigger. But here guys, you can see I have added another step over here, that is post trigger step, which means after making this complete API call, we have added this post trigger step, and here in this step, we have added a inbuilt multi-step action, and that is of get order item details. Now what it is guys, whenever we get a new order details from Amazon, we get the details of that order and the customer. But we don't get the details of the item, the product which customer has ordered. But in response in Pabbly Connect, we also want to show that data. So by using this post trigger step, basically an inbuilt action step of Pabbly Connect which we have created, we also get, or in the backend, we also retrieve the details of the item or the product which the customer has ordered, for which we have received a new order detail, and we also show that data in the front end. Now the question arises that how you can add this multi-step trigger or post-trigger step. So here by just clicking on this multi-step trigger, you can keep on adding these steps over here. And in the drop down, you can see all the inbuilt actions which you have created can be seen over here. So right now guys, I'm not using adding a new one. I'm just showing you a new inbuilt action, that how you can create this inbuilt action and how you can use these inbuilt actions over here. So to create a new inbuilt action, just go to this inbuilt action section from the left side and then click on create inbuilt action button, give your inbuilt action a name and save it. So in this way, you can create inbuilt actions over here. Then after that, we have to select the inbuilt action type. So here we have three different options. Either it can be a drop down and custom field option, either it can be a multi-step inbuilt action or an app auth validator. So right now, the action event on which we will be having a look is named as get order item details. And this is a multi-step action event. So we want to add this data after a complete trigger or action step. So here we have entered the name, we have selected the type. If you want, you can also add some description over here. Now after that guys, just enter basic details and click on save. And in the next step, we have to set up the API configuration of this inbuilt action. Select your HTTP method for which you want to make this API endpoint call. Enter the API endpoint and select the authentication type, AWS Signature. Connect your account over here. And guys, as we have done in Trigger, getting the response, making the connection of our account in the application and getting the response for this API call is very important for this inbuilt action as well, because we are going to use this inbuilt action in some kind of triggers or actions as well. So we have just made the connection, then we have received the simple response in the previous step, and then set body query or path parameter. So this API endpoint requires the path parameter of Amazon order ID. So we have created this parameter field over here, and then we have configured it as you can see over here. So here it is going to be a static parameter value. So in response type, response of trigger. So because we are creating this as a multi-step trigger, so we have to tell that from where we are going to get this response. So here we are receiving this response from the trigger event. So whatever response we have receiving in trigger, which we have configured few seconds ago in this video, we are going to use the response from there. Then it is asking us input type. So it will be a response. So we will, whatever response we are getting in trigger. So if you are getting some kind of input from the user in the front end, like a user is manually entering something in the trigger, and on that basis, we want to make this API call, you can select user input as well. Then it is asking us response parameter key. So we have referred to the API doc and entered the parameter key name. And then the test value. So we have entered the test value, that what kind of value will be passed. Then in field type, we have selected field as string. So it is going to be a string field, and then click on save. So in this way, you can configure this field as well. After configuring this field, just click on save and then click on send test request. And then you will get a response of a product detail. So whatever test value we have added over here, for that same test value, we have received the response. So after receiving response, we can see that we have successfully created this inbuilt action. And using this inbuilt action, and we just have to enter the Amazon order ID. And after that, by making this API call, we will get the item details, that what are the products has been ordered. So in this way, you can create multiple inbuilt actions and use those inbuilt actions which you have created inside triggers and actions as well. So let's get back to a trigger on which we were having a look. So after creating this inbuilt action, we have added this inbuilt action in this multi-step trigger. So whenever a user will select this trigger event of your application and will connect their account and hit on save and send test request, it will get the data, it will simplify it, and it will order it in the record order setting. And then also, because while receiving the data of a new order from Amazon Seller Central, we don't get the order item details. So using this inbuilt action, this multi-step post trigger step, we are going to get the new order item details as well. So in this way, we have successfully created this trigger. Now let's check this trigger in the front end. So we will go to our Pabbly Connect dashboard. And then let's create a workflow over here named as demo, for example. So the application on which we are having a look is Amazon Seller Central. This is the name of the application. Let's search for this same application, Amazon Seller Central. And after that, in trigger event from the dropdown, let's select the trigger event of new order. And then it is asking us to connect the application. When the user will click on connect, they have to connect their Amazon Sellers account, Seller Central account. Just click on this connect with Amazon Seller Central. And yes, here we can see that the pop-up we have added, it is asking us for the region. And yes, guys, we have successfully created this trigger over here. After this, let's learn how you can create actions. So in the same way, you can create multiple triggers, but now let's have a look on actions. Let's go to action section. And then by clicking on this create new action button, you can start creating your action event as well. Give your action event a name and click on save. And the first process is basically the same. So you just have to enter some basic details of the action event which you are trying to create. So the action event on which we are going to have a look is named as get order details. Let's have a look on this action event. So we have named the action event, entered some basic description of the action event. Also, you have an option to add the video tutorial and important help text over here. After entering these basic details, we will move down and here we have the API configuration option of this action event. That what does this action event will do. So we have selected the HTTP method and entered the API endpoint URL. So in this endpoint URL, we are asking for the order ID, that for what order we want to get details from Amazon Seller Central using this action. So this action event is of get order details. So we have to enter the order ID over here. So this particular API endpoint does not require any kind of parameters, fields or data. So that's why we haven't created any kind of fields or parameters over here. So you have to follow the same process of API configuration for actions as well, which you have created. So guys, in the same way, you can start creating multiple actions and configuring them as well. Just click on this create new action button and keep on adding action event of your application which you are integrating. So after building this action event, let's check this action event in the front end as well. So we'll get back to our Pabbly Connect workflow. In the choose app, once again, we will search for Amazon Seller Central. And then in action event from the drop down, we will select the action event of get order details. And yes, guys, here we can see that we can set the same action event. We just have to connect our Amazon Seller Central account and then we can use this action event as well. So guys, in this way, you can keep on integrating your applications inside Pabbly Connect, which are based on AWS Signature authentication. So if you're directly from the app integration team, you can actually integrate your application and submit it for approval to the Pabbly Connect team. And once your application gets approved, it will be publicly available to all to use on the Pabbly Connect platform. And if you're not from the app integration team, but somehow you have integrated an app inside Pabbly Connect, then too you can share this app privately with other users as well. Just go to this sharing section and then from here you can share this application with others. So guys, I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any kind of doubts or queries, you can write us in the comment box below. So this is it for today's video, guys. Thank you. Have a great day.